What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Joshi's Ramblings. Today we're going to be talking about Knights. They just got a really big change in kind of a surprise patch, which is pretty interesting. But we're going to go ahead and, of course, be talking about this not from the perspective of the Knights players, but we will be talking about it from the perspective of Guard players. Weird. Guard channel. Weird how that works. Anyway, so the first thing to know about what happened to Knights is they got massive points reductions on everything that wasn't in armature. We had Canis Rex go down 70 points. I think the biggest one, we had like the Valiant and the Castellan go down 115 points. And probably my single favorite, patch note of all time in any game I've ever played is the Canis Knight Porphyrion. Went from 710 points to 700 points. Yay! It's a small thing that happened. But mostly, one of the big things that we ended up seeing was that Imperial Knights got massive points drops for all of their big knights, and in exchange, we saw the same thing happen to Imperial Knights that we saw to Chaos Knights. All of the Armigers and War Dogs went down 1 toughness, so they went from toughness 10 to toughness 9, and in exchange, they gained an extra 2 wounds. The other thing that happened is that for all of the big knights, they went from toughness 12 to toughness 11, but they gained an extra 4 wounds. And with these big points drops, let's first talk about how the durability actually changed for these units. So I went ahead and did a couple of basic unit crunches. These first couple that we're going to be looking at are the changes to Armigers. And so you'll take a look at, this is a Luminar's battle tank with the lethal hits and full rerolls, so it's going to be shooting at something on a point. It's also within half range. You can do it with whatever numbers you want. The end result is going to look about the same in terms of what we're actually really comparing. And so what we can see is that when we were shooting at the old Armigers, if they were on an objective and we were getting them Melta 2, we had about a 60%, just under 60% chance to actually just full kill an Armiger. Even through the Feel No Pain, this does not include rotate ion shields, but it's about 60% to just full kill an Armiger. That's what it used to be. Now, it's about the same, right? Realistically, 0.5%, as humans, we are not going to feel that, especially over the number of dice that we're rolling. It is still about a 60% chance to just full kill an Armiger. This one is with a Rogaldorn battle tank. I mean, to be honest, doing the math with the Rogaldorn Commander, where you have 1 hit reroll, 1 wound reroll, and 1 damage reroll, is really hard to accurately math out because it just kind of depends. But basically, what we can see is that a Rogaldorn battle tank within Melta range and with lethal hits is going to also kill an Armiger, the old version, about 60% of the time, just a little bit less. And now we can see that it's a little bit lower, about 2%. But again, the 0.5% we were definitely not going to notice. 2% we're probably not really going to feel the difference. But you will have a couple of odd games here and there where they make that 1 extra Feel No Pain that they wouldn't have before, and now they're going to be living. But that'll happen maybe once every other game, where you will see an Armiger living on 1 wound against a Rogaldorn battle tank. It won't come up very often. However, one of the big things that you'll notice is that the overall damage that we are doing to these targets is more likely to kill them than they're not, right? We are still about 60% for one of these tanks to just full kill an Armiger. Next, let's take a look at some of the big knights. So this is just looking at a generic version of a knight, the toughness 12, 22 wound version, and now the toughness 11, 26 wound version. So it's just a generic knight. This is going back to the Luminar's battle tank, where we are shooting a Luminar's battle tank with lethal hits, full rerolls, and within Melta 2. And you can see that on average, what we were looking at is it used to be, if they didn't rotate ion shields, we would do about 12 damage to the knight, but more importantly, the number I kind of want to point to is the chance of slaying defender, which is about 7.5%. Okay, that was the old knights. If we look at the new knights, we still do about the same damage, right? It was 12 before, it's still 12 now. However, the chance of slaying the defender has gone from 7.5% to just under 3%. That's about, half the percentage, a little bit more, or a little bit less than half the likelihood that a Leman Russ just full kills a knight. And I know a Leman Russ shouldn't just full kill a knight. That's probably ridiculous, but that is a pretty significant gap in terms of how much damage we're actually going to be doing. We'll also take a look at the Rogaldorn Battle Tank, which does have a mixture of different strengths of weapons, including that Strength 12 gun, which is one of the big winners of this. It went from winning on 4s to now winning on 3s. And with the Rogaldorn Battle Tank, we were expected to do about 12 damage, but we were expected to just full kill a knight about 8% of the time, a little bit more. That number is about 3.4%. And so you can see that the actual just like raw amount of damage has not changed a whole lot. However, what this does mean is armigers are about as likely to die as they were before, but big knights are actually significantly harder to kill. If we're doing the same number of damage, the same raw wounds, they just have an extra 4 of them. They are way more likely to live than they were before against everything that's not like. I think other people have done the math on this, and I've heard Strength 6 and Strength 12 are the big winners shooting at big knights. And for guard, Strength 6 is like power fists, so it doesn't come up very often. And then Strength 12 is las cannons and the oppressor cannon on the Rogaldorn. So, like, we do have non-zero number of las cannons, but everything else is kind of a loser here, right? The pulverizer cannon, our multi-meltas are losers into big knights. Our plasma is a loser into both armigers and big knights, right? A lot of our weapons have become less effective at killing knights. And that's fine, right? Like, kind of is what it is. The problem is they have gotten significantly cheaper. So what does this mean? It does mean that our matchup into knights has gotten harder, simply because in the basic build that we were oftentimes seeing, one of the builds that you would see sometimes in competitive games is it was Canis Rex, 5 Helverins, and 5 Warglaves. That list is now Canis Rex, 6 Helverins, and 6 Warglaves. That is just an extra 2 bodies that we have to kill. And we can kill them, right? As we looked at with the math, it is not ridiculous that we can kill 3 or 4 of them per turn. However, that does mean that it's going to take us an extra turn on average to just get rid of them. So it is definitely harder for us to deal with the extra bodies that they're coming through, especially because they are just going to live for longer than they were before against almost all of our profiles. And this isn't just a guard problem. This is just a problem just like kind of across the board. Pretty much everything has gotten more difficult in terms of actually killing some of these big things. Again, unless you're at Strength 6, Strength 12, the difference doesn't really matter all that much. Okay. So with that, talking about that, a lot of things that you are going to be seeing is 5 big knights. So Canis Rex and 4 other big knights is going to be a real build that you're going to start seeing. Canis Rex and 12 little guys is also going to be real. Canis Rex, 10 little guys, and like 2 Immolators and 10 Sisters is also a real build. There's a lot of different variants that you're going to start seeing of knights, and for an army that was already performing fairly well, it is not ridiculous to think that knights might become the best army in the game for a little while, even overshadowing like Death Guard and T-Suns. That is not a prediction. That's just it might happen. So we will see what ends up happening with that. However, one of the big things that we also have to talk about is, as an Imperium army, we get access to allying knights. The rules, I don't believe, have changed. It is you can take 1 big or 3 small. It doesn't matter how many points they are. And so let's talk about the interesting ones. The main ones that we are going to be looking at are Canis Rex, the Knight Lancer, and the Atropos. There's also an argument that maybe like Warglaves are okay. I still think Warglaves have a lot of the same problems that they used to. But they're mostly just like, if you just want to put a vehicle OC bomb in the middle of the board, you can still do that, but they're basically the same as what they were before. Okay, first one, let's talk about Canis Rex. So Canis Rex is probably the most interesting ally by default. Like, if you're just looking to put a knight into a guard list, Canis Rex is the first one that you should be considering. And couple of reasons for this. He has gotten the same changes that everybody else did. He went down 70 points, so I believe he is now 380, I believe is the number. That is about the same price as 2 Leman Russes, right? 2 Leman Russ battle tanks. Is that exactly the same? No, it's very close. I think like it's 10 points plus 2 Leman Russ battle tanks puts you at the same as this. Don't math. Anyway, so a couple of big things about the Canis Rex is he's got a couple of really good weapons. The Chainbreaker, Las Impulse are high intensity, 24 inches, D6 attacks, Bliss Skill 2 at 1434. This is a really nice profile right now because Death Guard, Death Shroud Terminators are running around and they have 4 wounds. So something with 4 damage is very good into that. I think they only have 1 detachment that gives them -1 damage, but Canis Rex can just go in and just potentially just clear that unit without a second thought. The low intensity Lasm Pulsar is fine, and the Chainbreaker Multi-Laser also just kind of exists, but the D6 attacks at 1434, very nice. The other one is Freedom's Hand. He's got one of the craziest melee profiles in terms of like killing vehicles in the game. 5 attacks on 2s at 23-9 is ridiculous. That is going to 2 failed saves will just kill a Rogel Dorn. Of course, not including the blink. But the other big thing is he has a really, really good sweep. 10 attacks on 2s at 10-2-3 is going to kill like 8 Space Marines most of the time just on the face of it. With sustained, realistically, I mean, you're hitting about 10 out of 10 attacks. But that's not the only thing that makes this unit good. The other thing that makes this really good is his legendary free blade ability. Once per turn, I believe this has been normalized to once per battle round, but I would need to double check that, and I don't care enough to do it right now. You can target this model with a stratagem for 0 CP, and can do so even if you already targeted a different unit with a stratagem in the same phase. Now this is not as good in Guard as it is in Knights, right? He does not have access to the Knight stratagems. He does not have access to rotate ion shields. He doesn't have access to the fight on death. However, what you can do is that's just a free CP reroll. That is a rerolled failed save, or the other one that you'll often see is it is the reroll number of shots on the Lasm Pulsar, right? You're just going to go through, and you're like, oh no, I rolled a 1 on number of attacks. Let's reroll that. Okay, cool, I rolled a 4, right? You're going to just get the number of attacks that you need to just go through and start shooting things. That's one of the big things you can do with it. The other one is the Chainbreaker ability. Each time this model makes an attack, an unmodified successful hit roll of 5 scores a critical hit. You'll notice that all of their weapons have sustained. And so what this does is sustained is approximately equal to +1 to hit. And because you're already hitting on a 2, it's basically +2 to hit, right? On average, Canis Rex is going to get 7 out of 6 attacks made are going to actually hit. So that 5 attacks from Freedom's Hand is actually more likely to be 6 hits than it is to be anything less. The D6 attacks from the Chainbreaker Lasm Pulsar is more likely to be 1 more hit than whatever number you actually rolled. You're very likely to just be very consistent with the number of attacks you're actually putting out, which is one of the big things that Canis Rex does. And so one of the reasons why you would consider Canis Rex instead of 2 Leman Russes is he provides something that we don't really have access to in a lot of ways. He can just naturally walk through walls. If you roll a 1, you're battle shocked, but you just naturally walk through walls, and so you are a very natural just melee threat. One of the things that Guard has been missing for pretty much this entire edition is something that can stand in one of those central staging runes where our opponent can't really get to it, and then we can move 10 and then charge. Rough Riders have to go around walls. Bulgren can't go faster than 6 anymore. There's like an argument that the Death Watch kill team was kind of fulfilling this role, but Canis Rex does a lot more damage to a lot of things, right? It is a credible threat into every single target, and he's at a bargain. He's got a lot of high quality wounds. He's just an all around really good data sheet. Is he better than taking 2 Leman Russ battle tanks? I don't know. That's one of the interesting things. He's definitely worth testing. Other one, Cerastus Knight Lancer. So this one is not an interesting shooting threat. However, it is, I believe, a lot faster, 4 inches faster movement than Canis Rex, and he's got another fantastic. He has basically the same sweep, but without the crit 5 sustained, and his stab is very, very similar. I think it's almost identical to the one that Canis Rex has, although instead of sustained 5s, you have Lance. The other thing that this one does is, so it's faster, and you can free tank shock. And as a toughness 11 vehicle, that's the same as tank shocking with one of our vehicles, one of our Leman Russes, where you're going to do probably 4, but very likely 3 mortal wounds to anything you're charging, and then you're going to punch them really hard. The other thing that the Cerastus Knight Lancer has that Canis Rex doesn't, and one of the reasons why you might consider this, is the Cerastus Knight Lancer has a 4-up invulnerable save all the time. That's one of the big things that the Knights have a problem with is they do not have an invul save in melee, so that 3-up becomes a real liability when you're just getting punched by a bunch of Power Fists and Power Claws, AP2 damage 2, where you're now saving on 5s. Whereas the Cerastus Knight Lancer is going to save pretty much everything in the game on a 4 almost all the time. So it is more durable. It has an extra 2 wounds at 28 wounds, so it's more durable. It's almost the same melee threat as Canis Rex, and it's faster. So it's another good unit that you can consider in your army. Now, the last one that is particularly interesting is another one of the Cerastus Knights. This one is the Atropos. And this one, with a lot of people speculating that a lot of Imperial armies are going to start running Knights, the Atropos is the anti-Knight Knight. We're going to skip over the guns really quick and go directly to the ability. Macro Extinction Protocols. Each time this model makes an attack that targets a monster and vehicle unit, add 1 to the hit roll. If that target is Titanic or Towering, add 1 to the wound roll as well. So I first came across an Atropos a long time ago in the beginning of the edition, playing against my buddy who is also named Josh, and this thing just one-shot a Storm Sword. And it was the first time that I had actually seen my Storm Sword die when he just walked this thing up, shot it to death. Now, the Atropos is a little bit inconsistent in terms of how much damage it actually does. As you'll notice, just like with Canis Rex, all of its weapons are variable number of shots. The Atropos Las Cutter high intensity is D6, and you don't have that built-in reroll. But at strength 14, +1 to hit, +1 to wound, you're very likely to be getting however many shots you rolled are actually going to hit. And then strength 14, +1 to wound is you're now wounding pretty much. I think you're wounding everything in the game except a Stampa on a 2. If it's a knight, right? Like you're wounding other knights on 2s. Like that is really ridiculous. You're just forcing a lot of high quality saves. The other one, the Graviton Singularity Cannon, you're very likely to get 2 hits from this, but again, hitting on 2s, wounding other big knights on 2s, it's just a very consistent amount of damage that you can put into all these targets. The actual melee of the Atropos is fine, right? 12 attacks at 712 or 6 attacks at 1434. It's not insane, but it is good. And so you just have all these different options that you have for actually just attacking other people's knights. The Cerastus Knight is going to win a lot of knight offs as long as the Canis Rex or the Lancer are not getting into melee. They're not. The Atropos will just win a lot of those. So are these worth it? Should you be taking these instead of Leomor's Battle Tanks or Adorn or whatever? It's still, you probably are supposed to be taking Russes and Dorns. However, I know a lot of very strong players are already testing games with these, and I've been getting mixed opinions on like how strong they actually are, but they are interesting. You should start looking at this a little bit more. The Knight changes, I know several players are already looking at, am I just going to be a Knights player for the next couple of months until the next balanced data slate actually changes all of the abilities and the strength of this army. It's hard to say. Knights are looking very good right now. If you already have Knights, I would recommend that you start testing them in your games if you're going to be trying to play competitive. And if you don't, I would strongly recommend that if you are trying to play this and you don't already have a Knight and you're interested in competing, understand that if you were to buy one of these Knights right now, it's probably not going to be nearly this, like, it's probably not going to be this good for very long. You're probably going to get about 2 months, 2, maybe 3 months of, like, serious play out of it. And if that's enough for you, then you should do it. But if you don't already have a Knight and you're not willing to go get one, you're still going to be, like, a guard is still going to be in about the same place it was before. So if you have one, great, start testing with it. If you don't worry about it. I wouldn't buy one unless you just want a Knight model for your collection. So with that said, this has just been Joshi's Ramblings. We'll see you guys all next time. Bye-bye.